So Dr. Snowy, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we go into leadership, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Where did you grow up?
Well, Dr. Nick, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to have a discussion with yourself. Well, I was born many moons ago in Mamelodi. Mamelodi is in Pretoria. But when my mom passed on, we were taken to Hammanskraal to be raised by my maternal grandmother.
And what was your dream career when you grew up?
Amazingly, I wanted to become a medical doctor. But ultimately, while I studied math and science, I decided against becoming a medical doctor because of the nature in which I grew up. I grew up in extreme poverty. And I saw the need to do other than being a doctor, but being a social worker to assist families and communities to live a better life, to move out of poverty.
So you started your career as a social worker?
Correct, yes, yes.
And then how did you get into business?
So I started off as a social worker and then, moved up the ranks, and particularly in government at the Department of Social Development. Then I left the government public sector and moved to private sector. So I was employed. My first stint was as a managing director of TAR Consulting, which was a Safika holdings subsidiary in Johannesburg. And then I got an opportunity to be appointed at the Development Bank of Southern Africa. And that's where my social skills converted. But remember, Dr. Nick, that I also studied further. So while I started as a social worker, I ended up with a master's degree in business and a PhD in social policy. So that's what really, truly catapulted me to become a business leader.
And I believe at the DBSA you were running knowledge management?
Correct. I was actually, what is amazing, the story is, I attended a Knowledge Management Europe conference, and I discovered I was the only person that came from Africa. And then I asked them, do you have any other knowledge? They said, no, there's knowledge management of most continents. Africa is the biggest continent. And I came back motivated and determined to start Knowledge Management Africa. That's how it started, and consulted with other organizations such as the Africa Development Bank and institutions such as IDC and so on, and getting also academic institutions to participate, to bring knowledge onto the continent, from science to leadership to running a business to how government should work and function, issues of corporate governance, and so on and so on. So that's where it started. And I became the founding chair of Knowledge Management Africa.
And today you're the chairperson of BIGEN Africa?
Correct.
And I believe you transformed the business over the last, is it 5 or 7 years?
7 years now. Dr. Nick, it's interesting because I worked for the DBSA for close to 10 years. And working in the infrastructure development space, that gave me passion to understand that infrastructure is critical in improving the quality of life of people. We live in a continent where women still go and fetch water from the river. Women still go and fetch wood to make fire to be able to cook. And children walk long distances on gravel to go to school. Communities don't have clinics. And it's a long list. And that exposure of financing infrastructure development on the continent gave me the passion to say, I understand we need to finance, but what is the benefit of building infrastructure on the continent? Do we look at development impact of that infrastructure in improving the quality of life of people? Who are the beneficiaries? And do the beneficiaries participate in determining what the outcome of that infrastructure should be for them? And I must say that I was blessed because the DBSA had a role of wanting to really do more than just giving money, but giving what we call smart money, which means that it includes knowledge and to be able to bring in, the improvements that are required from infrastructure development. And while at the DBSA, then I got I was approached to become the CEO of BIGEN Africa. And BIGEN Africa at the time, in 2010 when I joined, it was known as an engineering company. And to turn it around to become an infrastructure development company, it was a journey. Because BIGEN was doing engineering and advisory services on infrastructure development. But while the contribution was key in designing infrastructure that will last for ages, infrastructure that will contribute in improving the quality of life, that development impact knowledge was not there. But I must say it was a blessing because the engineers in BIGEN are engineers with a conscience, and they understood the knowledge of saying, why are we building? Why are we designing infrastructure? And what type of designs should we make? Because it's one thing to build a bridge so that the cars can pass over that bridge because maybe there's a railway line underneath the bridge. But that bridge must accommodate people who walk on foot. That bridge must accommodate donkey carts because there's still people in rural communities who are using donkey carts to go wherever they want to go. There are people who are still being pushed through wheelbarrows to be taken to hospitals, to be taken to go and receive pensions because they are old. So we need to accommodate that. So in every design that we design, we must think about the benefits of those infrastructures towards the improvement in the quality of life of people. When you put a dam and you put a tunnel to tunnel water, water cannot just go to industries like mines. It must pass through communities. Communities must have water. So what is the social contribution that we are making to improving the quality of life of people? That's what BIGEN embraced. And that's what BIGEN brought into the story. And today, we have won a number of awards as the top infrastructure firm in South Africa and being recognized also in the continent.
So Dr. Snow, looking back at your career, would you say, what was a major turning point? Was there a major turning point in your career?
Yes, there was a major turning point. And the major turning point was when I left being a social worker, being interested in only addressing poverty and doing something to help the poor. But the turning point was we can do more. And we can do more not only being a worker, but being a leader in business, making those decisions myself. So becoming a CEO was a turning point for me because now the buck stopped with me. Because every decision that I had to make in terms of the strategy of addressing poverty and improving the quality of life also depended on me in giving the direction and also being a visionary and being committed to doing what I said we should do as an organization.
And can you tell us what are your sources of inspiration?
Dr. Nick, I'm going to be controversial because a lot of leaders are ashamed to be or to say who they are. My source of inspiration, and I'm not going to be apologetic, is because I believe in a greater being. I believe in God. South Africans, they know me. They know that I'm a God-fearing leader. So my inspiration comes from God to say there's expectations that there is a greater one who gives us wisdom and who gives us strength to be able to do the kind of things that we do as leaders. There are also other leaders who are human beings who, and I would say, had also made my life a life of changing the way I saw things as a leader. Madiba, Tata Nelson Mandela, for me, was one of the living inspirations. Desmond Tutu and his wife Leah, the way they lived their lives as a couple that shows that people can stand together and still do things in life. There are women on the continent. My one best sister and friend, President of Mauritius, President Fatim, has made so much contribution as a leader, showing that women can also become leaders. So those are my inspirations. There are many more others. There are women in South Africa that I salute every day. There are women on the continent that I also salute every day, and all over the world. And I mustn't say only women, but also men. You are one of the people that inspires me. Ever since I met you as well, Dr. Nick, you amaze me.
Thank you.
You know, when you started with your journey and really trying to motivate organizations to lead in a different manner and giving them examples. Every time I see you, I remember Shaka Zulu's story. And Ezekiel code and so on and so on. So you are one of the people that taught me that you can be resilient.
Thank you.
And in your contribution that you make, it doesn't have to be huge and you don't have to be popular, but you can make a difference in organizations and in building leadership. And that's who you are. You also inspire me.
Thank you. And what would you say is driving you today? What is a legacy that you are building and that you want to leave behind?
Well, as I said, you know, Dr. Nick, I grew up in a poor environment, so I understand poverty, and I believe poverty can build you as a leader as well, to become a leader. And my legacy is to truly contribute towards the eradication of poverty, particularly getting young people to go to school and get educated, because I believe education is the key to life. And unless our children are educated, they will not be able to become leaders like we are. Yes, there are leaders who have never been to school, but those leaders grew up in a different environment and have different values. So if we can get those values, even to those children who are not academically inclined, but teach them Ubuntu, teach them to do things differently from the way they are used to doing them. Given, for example, these days, we've got so much technology that is available. If we can teach our children to say cell phones, social media can build or break you, and that understanding, and they can use it in a powerful way of improving their lives, then I would know that I have left a legacy. And that's my passion. And as I said as well, improving the quality of life through infrastructure development will be something that I will do until I go home to heaven.
Now, Dr. Snowy, let's talk about leadership. What would you say are the enablers of the future leader? What should future leaders do more to build a better world, to build a better society, and to really make a difference?
Well, Dr. Nick, there are many enablers, and I'm going to slowly go through what I believe are. The first one, as I said, and I think I've said it from the beginning, is infrastructure development. I believe in power, in energy, that we need to electrify and give opportunity for people and families to live a light life. Let's enlighten through electricity, through power, through energy, this dark continent that people believe that it is a dark continent. I don't believe that story. It is not a dark continent. Secondly, that through transportation, we can facilitate the movements of goods and services. We need roads, we need rail, we need ports, and so on. People need homes. People need hospitals. They need clinics. Children need school. People need water, need sanitation. So infrastructure for me is the number one enabler to really truly improve the quality of life on the continent. The second one is partnerships. Knowingly that, Dr. Nick, there's no way that you can do things on your own. You need partners. We have learned also from you through your training that you gave us as the leadership of BIGEN, that people must work together, partner together, find synergies in one another and be able to make a better contribution. Because on your own as an individual, can be an individual as a person or an individual as an organization. There's no way that you can do that or make that contribution that you want to make in a bigger way when you are alone. You are better when you are two or more. And partnership is, you have to get people with a common purpose. There has to be a unity of purpose. There has to be morals by agreement. My values and yours have to speak to each other for us to be able to partner. And also Ubuntu. So under partnerships, I'm saying 4 things. 1, common purpose, unity of purpose, morals by agreement, as well as Ubuntu.
And what would you say are the disablers of future leadership? What should we guard against?
1, I'm saying we should guard against destroying infrastructure. Because we build infrastructure, it takes billions and trillions, Dr. Nick, to build infrastructure on the continent. The continent is not working smoothly because there's lack of infrastructure in some of the countries. In some of the countries where there's infrastructure, the infrastructure is not maintained. So if you build a road and you never maintain the road, it's hopeless because transportation and movements of goods and services will not happen. So we need to make sure that we maintain infrastructure, encourage our young people not to destroy or ban infrastructure. Because when people are frustrated with lack of services, then they ban the infrastructure. So I want to encourage them not to do that, because that infrastructure is for their future use. So we need to build infrastructure for future generation. And then also we must make sure that we mustn't build white elephants. When I say white elephant, it's infrastructure that has been built that is never being used. We see a number of white elephants of stadiums that are there, that are never used for multi-purpose, other things that could generate income, could create employment for people on the continent. But also we need to ensure that there's integrated infrastructure. Multi-purpose use of infrastructure is critical, rather than one use, one purpose infrastructure. So we need to make sure, and I give an example of if you build a road, for example, that you are building a road that is going to a power station for ESCOM. Why not build that road that goes via the schools so that children walk on the tar roads to go to school? Why shouldn't that road pass through a clinic or a hospital so that ambulances will be able to deliver patients quickly and smoothly? And also, it will also, if you build a road that passes through farmers that are busy producing maize, they can transport their products easily to the market. So we need to think in an integrated manner when we build infrastructure.
So would you say we should always think community first?
Yes, exactly. You have to think community first. You actually have to think about who are the beneficiaries of whatever that you're doing. If I'm a leader of who? A leader without followers is no leader. A leader without people that respect and understand the vision and be motivated and driven by that leader's vision is no leader. So in everything that we do, I believe that as leaders, we need to make sure that there are beneficiaries, people that benefit from that. And benefiting doesn't mean that you just have to receive, but you also want to make a contribution. What is the community's contribution in, for example, looking after the infrastructure? When the community see a tap of water running and there's no one closing the tap, there's a problem. The community must guard that tap. They must make sure that tap doesn't leak. They must make sure that the water is not wasted. So they're participating in maintaining the infrastructure. But also to say that, my legacy also, Dr. Nick, is to making a difference and improving the quality of life, in particular, of women. So while women, in most cases, are recipients of infrastructure, the benefits goes to them because they can switch on the light. They don't have to go and fetch wood. Now they can open a tap. They don't have to get water from the river. We want women to be participants in that infrastructure. So women must invest in infrastructure. It doesn't mean that women, when they're at home, they don't have money. They might want to be investors in that particular infrastructure. They might also want to make money and benefit, be employed in the building process of that infrastructure. We have youth that is unemployed. How do we get them to benefit from the infrastructure that has been built? How do we teach them? How do we tap on their knowledge to contribute into infrastructure? We now see that the Internet of Things, Dr. Nick, is the way and the solution for leadership. So young people have so much knowledge in understanding gadgets. It's amazing what they can do. But do we bring their knowledge to bear? When we think about developing infrastructure, when we design infrastructure, do we use the latest technology? Do we think about what's going to happen in the future to maintain that infrastructure? We have discovered in BIGEN as well that we don't need people to go and assess a particular, you can use drones to go and do that. You can use technology that goes underground. In the past, for us to tap on finding where the leakage of a pipe for water or sewer is, you had to actually to use people to dig, to go down to the pipes. Those days, there's technology that senses that there's a water leakage. Today, there's technology that goes and do the full overview of an assessment of a land where we want to build infrastructure. Technology is advanced. And how do we make sure that our young people who are so technologically savvy, can we use them to think about the solution and the maintenance of that infrastructure in the future? So my passion is young people, is women, and making sure that the infrastructure that we build will benefit the future generation. That, for me, that's leadership.
Now, Dr. Snowy, when you're speaking to aspiring leaders, what do you tell them they should focus on for future-proofing their career?
Well, there are lots of things. One, I can say that there's one thing, Dr. Nick, of being a leader is accountability. How accountable are we to our actions for now and also for the future? We have seen what is happening around. There is a lot of companies that are failing because of lack of accountability. Accountability as a leader gives you the responsibility to understand that what you're doing, you're not doing it for yourself alone, but you're doing for the benefits of the future generation. The second one, and I'll come back to that, because in accountability, there's one thing that I believe is we need to have collective decision. There's no way that a company could fail, and I don't want to mention names, a company could fail because of one person. It's a collective responsibility. Where were the other leaders? Why didn't they hold the other one accountable? Because it's important to hold each other accountable. And it's also important for openness, to be able to scrutinize decisions that have been made by co-leaders. And also what I believe in co-piloting leadership, that because you cannot lead on your own, you've got other people that you're working with that you can lead with. It is important to ensure that that leader is held accountable. The second thing is, well, one thing that I believe in, Dr. Nick, is doing good while doing business. Corporate governance is so important. There's no way that you can be a leader and succeed when you don't follow due process of what is expected of your company. In South Africa, we've got Companies Act. There are prescripts of regulations and law that expects us to do things that are right. Remember, as I always say to leaders, if you run an organization is a person that cannot speak for herself. That person is reliant on directors, on people that have been appointed to look after this person who cannot speak, who cannot act, who cannot do anything. And it is important to remember, as you are a leader or a director of a company, to ensure that you lead that organization in a manner that will sustain that organization in the future for future generation to also still benefit. So doing good for me is about integrity, doing things in an integral way, or with integrity, let me say that, with dignity, with passion. If you don't have passion of what you're doing, don't be a leader. A leader has to be passionate about what they're doing, because when you're passionate, you're able to protect this person that cannot speak for herself. And also loyalty. There are people who get to become leaders for selfish reasons. We cannot have such leaders. A leader has to be loyal to this person that does not speak for himself or herself, and ensuring that people who are employed, because when you're a leader and you make the wrong decisions, you're not only affecting the leadership of the organization, but the people who are down there, who are reliant to live a good life, because they're employed by that particular organization. So when that organization go bust, what's going to happen to all other people that are working in that organization? So we have to be selfless as leaders. It's very important.
So, Dr. Snowy, over the years you've been mentoring many aspiring leaders. Can you maybe share with us a success story or two where you mentored somebody and that person really took your advice to heart?
Yeah, Dr. Nick, there are many. Currently, I'm mentoring now 18 young women and 2 young men. And in the past, I mentored a number of people. I'm reluctant to mention just the names of people, but I'm proud because one of these young ladies is a CEO of a big organization today. Because in the journey, while the journey was not easy, it was very difficult. We spent a lot of time crying together. And I remember one day when she came to me, she said, Snowy, I'm giving up. I'm done. I can't do it anymore because it is difficult. And I've encouraged her to be resilient, to stick it on, and to believe in herself, and to believe that she's in the right direction, that she can continue and be successful. And today, I nearly mentioned the name, she is one of the successful CEOs of a unique business, and the first woman in that business in the world.
And Dr. Snowy, when you speak to aspiring leaders, who are the role models that you advise them they should study, and maybe the books they should read?
Well, there are many books, but like I said to you in the beginning, Dr. Nick, the Madiba, I'll call it the Madiba Code. You wrote a lot of books on Madiba. Those are the books that I will say they should follow. Because you know what Tata did in terms of espousing certain values of becoming a leader. It's something that will live with us for the rest of our lives. So I would say that any book that talks about Tata Mandela, the way he led this country out of challenges that we're facing in terms of apartheid, and becoming the first black president in South Africa, and leading the country to unity. It's never done anywhere in the world. And therefore, I believe that we can learn, even as organizations, where as companies we can bring unity in our organization than competition. We can also lead in humility, understanding that no one leader can deliver a strategy of an organization by themselves. Tata always said, it's not only me, it is the whole team that is around me. If we can remember that. Thirdly was the fact that he said, in everything that you do, don't think about yourself. There was selflessness in him. Think about other people. Who are the people? That is why I emphasize who are the beneficiaries. Because he always said, I always thought about the future generation, that if I can lead this country out of bondage, I will give freedom. Together with my comrades, I will give freedom to the future generation. So even as leaders in organizations, we must think that those organizations must be there forever. And the future generation must benefit from that. Fourthly, he said, when he was asked to go for the second term, he said, I believe there are young people who can take the reign and run with the leadership of this country. How many leaders would want to die in their position of power? We know of examples, even on the continent, in a country not far from us, where a leader would want to rather die in a position of power and not wanting to hand over the power to young people. Madiba gave over that leadership on time and being there to make sure that the country succeeds in that leadership. So, Dr. Nick, I can speak of so many characteristics and examples of what Madiba did. I believe that Madiba is a true example of what leaders should become going forward in the future. And like I said, there's a number of books that are available. You wrote the Madiba Code as well. So make sure you distribute that book.
Thank you. And Dr. Snowy, how can people connect with you? Where can they follow you?
Well, I'm on Twitter. I'm also on, I've got a website, which is a journal, which I write stories of the journal of my life, that a number of people follow. It's about hope, giving hope and encouragement. So that website is there. So my Twitter name is Joyful for Jesus. Joyful for Jesus. And then my website is SJK, which stands for Snowy Joyce Khoza, but it's SJK Journal. So they can follow that. Otherwise, my name is easy. You can Google and find where I am and what I'm doing. And then also I'm on LinkedIn.
And last but not least, is there one piece of advice that you would really like future leaders to take heed of, to take to heart, and implement in their own leadership?
Yeah, let me make a statement first, Dr. Nick. I know and appreciate a number of leaders who are incorruptible. And I'm emphasizing this because corruption, and it's not only in South Africa, I work on the continent and I see it. The one thing that I can plead with leaders is just to be selfless, because selfishness and greed is what drives people to become incorruptible. So if there's one message that I can give to leaders, is about selflessness and thinking about why they're in those positions and how they can contribute in making a difference in the lives of other people, than thinking only about themselves and their loved ones. Africa as a continent is not progressing at the speed that we expected to progress, mainly because of corruption. And corruption, I'm saying it globally, broadly, because it involves a number of things. From people wanting you to change things and do it in their own way, to people who want to be given something because they are giving you something. It is our jobs as leaders to do what we're supposed to do. We are paid to do what we do. We benefit from what we are doing as leaders. It is wrong to expect to be given a brown envelope also, in addition to you receiving your own salary. We must think about other people who are expecting to see improvements in their lives because of who we are, whether you're private sector or whether you're public sector, whether you're an NGO, all of us, of civil society, all of us have got the responsibility to lead in our small areas of operations to make a difference in improving the quality of life. So for me, Dr. Nick, I will go home to heaven saying the same thing about corruption, because really it destroys the fiber of society and it destroys this continent. As I said, the slow progress on this continent is because of corruption. And I'm saying to all of us as leaders, let us be unashamedly incorruptible. And I can tell you, all other things like Ubuntu, love, giving, unselfishness, all of those things will just fall into place because we'll be known to be leaders who are unashamedly incorruptible.
Dr. Snowy, thank you so much for your insights. Thank you so much for opening up your heart and your wisdom to share with us these lessons from a long career of leadership. And thank you for helping us build a better future. Thank you for inspiring us and inspiring future leaders. And thank you from leading from the heart. I think that is what I appreciate the most about your leadership.
Thank you.
I want to wish you all the best.
Thank you, Dr. Nia. I wish you all the best as well. Thank you.